Hi everybody, welcome back to Mel Did It Herself. Today we are doing a quick little upcycle on this curbside find. So one day when I was out on garbage day, every now and then I do like a little drive around my neighborhood on garbage morning, and if there's any good pieces sitting out there, I'll grab them and then kind of just like store them in the garage until I can get around to them. So this one I found a couple weeks ago. It's in perfect condition. It's a bit dated, kind of depending what your style is, but it was very sturdy. It was a very heavy mirror, so I thought it could do something with it. And I really liked the kind of arched, kind of curved lines it had. So I was thinking, let's make it a little bit farmhouse, a little rustic looking, and hopefully somebody can put it in their home. So the first part of any thrift flip or upcycle is to give it a really thorough cleaning, whatever it is that you will be working on. So here I'm just using some TSP cleaner that I have in a spray bottle, and what this is just a heavy-duty degreaser and all-purpose cleaner. So I'm just trying my best to get in all the little nooks and crannies. There's like a lot of different corners and stuff of this frame on the mirror, so just making sure I get in there as much as I can, and I'm just using a shop rag to wipe that up, and that's going to get rid of any dust, any oil, dirt, that kind of stuff that might be lingering on it. I did go over the mirror itself briefly, but I then went through after and wiped it with water because I actually didn't know if this would be like too harsh for the mirror itself, if it would take away the finish. So I would say be careful of getting it on an actual mirror if that's what you're working on. But then just going through and wiping off any of the extra degreaser, and then off camera I also went through with just a clean rag, like a microfiber cloth, with water, and got rid of any sort of residue that there might be, because I don't want that degreaser to be sitting underneath when I go to paint it. So just making sure that it's all clean, dried, and tidy. Jumping forward a bit, we now are starting to put the paint onto it. So I'm using Rust-Oleum chalked in linen white, and I'm just using my Wooster brush, which is just a little mini handheld brush. I find it really useful because it has a really short, kind of stubby nub of a handle. It's also kind of like the handle is made of like a rubber, so I just find it really useful for pieces like this where, number one, I don't want anything too big because there are some nooks and crannies that I'm wanting to make sure that I get into. And as well, the rubber or rubberized handle really helps for these kind of arched corners because it's a little bit more malleable, so it kind of like bends with the bristles as opposed to having the bristles have to like work harder. I just feel like it's more gentle and it feels nicer on the hand than like hard wood. So that's besides the point, but I would really recommend this brush, especially in Canada where we don't have, at this point, super easy access to things like zebra brushes, which is another popular brand that I hear a lot about, and they have their Palm Pro, but you have to pay like taxes and customs and stuff. At this point in time, I know they're now being added to the Fusion line, so that is awesome that that partnership is happening. But for now, I'm using this Wooster brush and I'm very happy with it. So you can see here, this paint that I'm using is a chalk-based paint, so that means there's minimal prep needed. I did give it a good cleaning, obviously, which I think you should do for any project, no matter what you're putting over it. But I didn't go through and scuff sand the surface of this wood frame or anything like that. Because of the chalk paint, it's a little bit easier to adhere to shinier surfaces. You can certainly go through and do a scuff sand if you'd like, but it's not needed in order to get a good finish. So I'm just going through and getting the preliminary parts of the frame done. I'm not doing up close to the mirror at this point because I don't want to get any paint on the mirror, but I went ahead and taped it off after this. As you can see, just using some frog tape. You can use painter's tape as well, but I find frog tape to be better in terms of just trying to get a good smooth line, and it's kind of extra sticky. It adheres really well. So I like to use that whenever possible. You have to spend a couple more dollars on it, but they're huge rolls, so it goes a long way. Now putting white paint over a dark wood, I did need to do a few different coats on this. I am going for a rustic look and will later be doing some light distressing, so I didn't care if it was super perfect and like super opaque, but I did want to make sure it looked intentional. So I probably did like 3 to 4 coats on this piece, and like the last coat or two was certainly kind of just like more touching up the spots that needed it versus going all over the whole thing, because I didn't want to like overload it with paint. But you can see here I'm periodically spraying my brush after it has some paint on it, and also prior to putting it into the paint, just with some water. And that's because this is a very thick chalk-based paint, I find. The brand itself, it's a great brand and it's very accessible, which is really useful. I get it at Home Depot, but it does get pretty thick, so I like to spray it periodically just to kind of thin that down, and then you get less lines in the paint. Again, I'm going for a rustic look, so the lines aren't the biggest deal, but it just helps your paint to go further. Now I thought putting a couple coats of paint would kind of fill in these holes, but it did not. So I'm just using some natural colored wood filler, and I'm just going through with my finger and pushing those into the holes and trying to make like a smooth surface. And just kind of wiping away the excess, letting that dry fully, and then just with a high grit sandpaper smoothing that down so that it's level with the rest of the mirror, so that it's a little bit inconspicuous. So then after I put a coat over it, you can see it's looking much more flawless, and I put a couple more coats of paint on it as well. There's a couple imperfections, but I'll say it again, we're going for the rustic look, so I wasn't looking for perfection. Of course, I wouldn't miss this part. Nothing better than a good tape peel. So then the last step is just to go through and add some light distressing, and this is where that rustic kind of farmhouse effect is going to come through most. So everyone kind of does this differently, and you can just kind of feel it out. Worst case, you take off too much and you just go back with a dry brush and kind of put some more paint on it. But I like to focus on the areas that would naturally distress kind of on their own. So think of corners, places where there's, you know, like right angles meeting, definitely at the base where you'd be like shuffling the mirror around, there'd be more wear and tear. And I just start with those pieces and then step back, take a look at it and see where more should be added or taken away from, I suppose. So it just kind of takes practice with distressing. I'm using a high grit sandpaper here, but you can also just use a cloth with some water. Because it's a water-based paint, you'll just wipe it away. So just a reminder that this is what we started out with, and then get an idea of where we ended up. we're gonna go ahead and ignore the fact that I do not make my bed every morning. I am just one human. Don't blame me. You can see the distressing here. It's just sporadic, but I think when you take a step back and look at it overall, it adds a good effect to it. Some people like more distressing. I try to keep it fairly minimal to just kind of catch your eye in certain spots. And then these are some shots with it all staged up that can be found over on my Instagram. If you're not already following me on Instagram, I would love if you would come on over and join me. My handle is MelDidItHerself, same as it is here. If you enjoyed this video, if you could like and subscribe, I would also appreciate that. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.